Welcome to this service of worship at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson. I'm Holly Olbrich. I'm President-elect of the Board of Trustees and Interim Worship Chair, and I am your worship associate this morning. We have a lot of announcements, so for some of them, I'm going to refer you to the Weekly Connection. If you're a visitor, you may not be familiar with the Weekly Connection, but we're happy that you found us, and we would encourage you to either call the office at 864-654-5959 or send an email message to UUFC administrator at uufc.org and ask to be added to our mailing list and our announcement list, and then you'll get announcements of upcoming services and news of events at the fellowship. And so we hope that you will make that connection with us as we eventually move into live services and meeting together in person. But for right now, virtual services are going to be the order of the day for at least the rest of September. We may be moving to live streaming. We certainly hope so. Announcements. First of all, the photo directory is now available on the website. If you need a password, get in touch with Becky and she will share it with you. A set of keys was found at the building. If you're missing a set of keys, get in touch with Becky and see if you can retrieve them. There are a number of adult education opportunities. There is a Black Lives Matter Lunch and Learn, either Monday evening, the 14th of September, or at late in the afternoon on the 16th. It involves a crossword puzzle. Details are in the Weekly Connection. There's an adult faith exploration class starting up Monday evening, September 14th, based on the book, The Guru on the Mountain. You can register for that online. Again, if you go to the Weekly Connection, you'll find the link. Another event during the week is bingo on Thursdays at 7:30 or 6:30, I'm sorry. Again, that's in the Weekly Connection. We certainly encourage you to sign up for Building Your Own Theology, which will be taught by Holly Ulbrich and Reverend Christina Branum-Martin. This is a really good opportunity over a six-week period to explore with others exactly what your understanding of big theological questions like God and human nature and evil and social justice and just a whole lot of things about what's our place in the universe and what do we do with our lives, what do we think happens after death. And different people will have different answers, but I think in listening to one another, we may refine our own understanding or think about questions we haven't thought about a lot. So I encourage you to sign up for this class. I've taught it a number of times. Reverend Martin has taught it a number of times. This will be our first experience teaching it together. And that starts, let's see, when's the starting date? I think it's the end of September. So we hope that you'll consider taking it. We actually have some events today. One is a food collection, and the other is a parade. The parade will be at 12:30, and Christina will have her art car, and you can drive by in your car, drop off a food donation if you remember to bring one in the red wagon on the parking lot, and then drive up and roll down your passenger window, introduce yourselves to Reverend Christina, and it's a chance to actually meet her in person, which we wish could be more common. Also, the social time after the service. Again, the link for the social time is in the announcement that you received of this service or on our website, uufc.org. So we hope that you'll join us for this conversation time after the service. Just a couple of other things. There's a congregational meeting coming up the 27th of September. That will probably replace social time. The board needs to make that decision. We've got some bylaws changes that need to be made, and update on our financial condition, and an update on reopening. It's for members only because we'll be voting on bylaws changes, but we'll certainly share the results with the rest of you. Also, there's a book discussion based on Ibram Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist. Rhonda Powell is coordinating the production of cloth masks for those of you who sew, Janie Shipley is coordinating a meal for at Our Daily Rest. If you want to respond to any of these opportunities, check the Weekly Connection for details. Again, thank you for being with us this morning. The opening words for today: come into this circle of community. Come into this sacred space. Be not tentative. Bring your whole self. Bring the joy that makes your heart sing. Bring your kindness and compassion. Bring also your sorrow, your pain. Bring your brokenness and your disappointments. Spirit of love and mystery, help us to recognize the spark of the holy that resides within each of us. May we know the joy of wholeness. May we know the joy of being together.
Hi there. It's so good to be with you all again. Today, I have a sweet but important little story to share with you. And to help me tell it, I have a friend here who was once a favorite friend of one of my children when they were very little. And I'm not going to embarrass them by telling you which one of my children it was, though. So, are you ready to help me tell the story? Okay, here we go. There once was a beautiful and powerful tiger. One day, she was captured by a mean and cruel man who put her into a cage. The man kept the cage in the jungle, not far from his house. Every day, he would bring a bowl of water and some food to the lonely tiger. Sometimes, the tiger would see her reflection in her bowl of water, and she would say, "My, I must be a beautiful tiger." When the man heard her say this, he would tell her, "No, you are not a beautiful tiger. You're very ugly. You're a pitiful creature." And sadly, the tiger would believe him. Some days, after she'd eaten her food, she would walk back and forth in her small cage and feel energy and power moving through her body. And she would say, "My, I must be a powerful tiger." But when the man heard her say this, he would lie and tell her, "No, you are weak and puny. You're a pitiful creature." And sadly, the tiger would believe him. Then, one day, when the man was nowhere around, a bear happened to walk by the cage. He saw the tiger inside and spoke to her. "Beautiful and powerful tiger, what are you doing lying around in that cage?" "Don't make fun of me," said the tiger. "I know that I am neither beautiful nor powerful." "I'm not making fun of you," said the bear. "You are surely the most beautiful and powerful tiger I have ever seen. I'm only surprised to see you lying there when clearly you are strong enough to break free of that cage." "You really think I could break out of this cage?" asked the tiger. "Quite easily, I should think," said the bear. The tiger wasn't so sure about that at first. She had been told so many times that she was a weak and pitiful creature. But suddenly, it seemed that she could feel that energy and strength moving through her body again. She began to pace back and forth inside her cage, and then, almost without thought, she leapt against the cage door, and it burst open without any resistance. Once she was outside, the tiger seemed a little dazed. "That cage didn't even have a lock on it," she said. "I spent so much of my life stuck in there, and the door wasn't even locked." The bear looked at the tiger with soft brown eyes and said, "Those kinds of cages don't need locks. It is the lie that we believe in that keeps us in our cages, and it is the truth that sets us free." Sometimes it can be very hard to believe in ourselves, especially when others make us feel like we're not very special. But I want each of you to know that you are special. You are beautiful and you are powerful, just like the tiger.
I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. My ears are wide open. My eyes are now open to see what I may be. I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. I'm listening. I am listening. In this moment of Spirit, speak through me. I can hear the voices of all my kind. I'm listening, singing. I am listening, this tweeting and howling into the wind. My ears are wide open, and oh, the joy. My eyes are wide open, oh, the love to see and what hear for you and me. Oh, I'm listening in this moment of silence. I am listening. I hear Spirit speak through me. Did you sleep well?
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you a favor? Can you go and push with Jake for 5 minutes while I finish? You see I'm doing some worky stuff.
For 5 seconds?
5 minutes. You'll see how long. It's not very long.
How many seconds is 5 minutes?
Well, it's 300 seconds, but you don't have to count to 300. I'll just be in there to get you when I'm all done, okay?
So who's gonna have to count to 300?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Hello, I'm the Reverend Christina Branum-Martin, and I'm the interim minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson. I'm so glad to be with you today. And I really love that song we just heard, I'm Listening, by Leah Morris. And that small snippet of real life afterwards with a child asking how many seconds is in 5 minutes is so indicative of what my life is like, juggling ministry and parenting and schoolwork virtually at home. I imagine all of you are juggling so many things differently these days in this strange and weird time we're in. So in the spirit of celebrating in the midst of it all, let's light the chalice. If my match will light. May we share our words of affirmation. We gather together in the spirit of love, with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another. I'm so glad to have lit the chalice with you and with more than 1,000 other Unitarian Universalist congregations who are doing so all over the world at this time today. And I light 2 candles. 2 candles, one for our collective joys, our personal celebrations, all the things that make our heart sing, and all the daily moments of peace that carry us through this time. And the second is for our collective concerns, our worries for each other, our concerns about our health and our well-being, our friends and our family, our communities, our world. So much. I know that some people in our own fellowship are still healing from COVID-19. Some are grieving their spouses as they move towards a different phase in their life. Some are dealing with chronic pain. Some are dealing with worries about their jobs. We hold you in our hearts at this time. So these candles we've lit for joys and concerns today, so we can carry this community together through this time. Would you join me in the practice of meditation and prayer? Meditation is a way of creating a moment of clear space to refresh our spirit and to invite in peace even when things are difficult. And prayer can be thought of as a way we bring to our consciousness our highest hope for ourselves, others, and our planet. So at this time, I invite you to relax more comfortably in your chairs wherever you are, and if you feel so comfortable, to close your eyes. And join me in the calming and restorative quiet of this moment. I share this reading with you. It's titled The Sound of Silence by Raymond. Here in the space between us and the world lies human meaning. Into the vast uncertainty we call. The echoes make our music, sharp equations which can hold the stars and marvelous mythologies we trust. This may be all we need to lift our love against indifference and pain. And here, in the space between us and each other, lies all the future of the fragment of the universe, which is our own. Amen.
This reading was written by retired Union minister, Reverend Robert Fulgham. Many of you may be familiar with his most famous book, All I Really Need to Know, I Learned in Kindergarten. The words of Reverend Fulgham. There is indeed a time for all things under heaven, and for all the great rites of passage, weddings, funerals, graduations, and retirements, a time for anniversaries and reunions, for sunrise and sundown, for moon and stars, for moon and rain, for stars, a time for the first breath, ah, and the last breath, oh. But in the meantime, there is the infinite moment, a time to do the dishes, and a time to walk the dog, a time to raise our children, and a time to love one another.
Thank you, Holly, for that reading. Today's sermon is inspired by the wisdom and the stories from one of my favorite writers, Robert Fulghum. He makes me laugh. He's a wonderful storyteller. And he's also a retired Unitarian Universalist minister who is widely published. Many know him as the author of All I Ever Need to Know, I Learned in Kindergarten. And one of his other books, From Beginning to End, is about rituals. You can certainly see the influence of him being a minister in his writing of this book. And like the kindergarten book, it is sweet and tender and full of personal reflection, and it shines light on the all-encompassing nature of rituals and how they bring meaning and the sacred into our lives when we let them. He starts the book with these 4 propositions. To be human is to be religious. And to be religious is to be mindful. And to be mindful is to pay attention. And to pay attention is to sanctify our existence. Now, many of you who are humanists, like myself, or those who are less comfortable with religious language might wonder, what does he mean by proposing that to be human is to be religious? And on top of that, he incorporates the phrase to sanctify existence. Let's see what the Unitarian Universalist minister says about these terms. Just hold on with me for a bit. Fulghum says, it is the stuff of the everyday which gets us there. And let's see what he means. So this book, From Beginning to End, is about ritual. It's about the daily rituals as one type of ritual, and the rites of passage as another. So first, let's explore daily rituals. All through the day, all of us, through our busyness, we fill ourselves with small habits. We all have them. Perhaps you have a certain place you put your keys every day. You have a certain thing that you do when you cut the apple in the same way every time, perhaps even as your parents did for you when you were little. These things, these small habits fill our day. Quite often we know of our habits in the morning, and you morning people know who you are. Such as when your morning begins in regular fashion with your motions and sounds and smell of perhaps your first cup of coffee or the brewing of a cup of tea. Or maybe for you it's the reading of the daily headlines of the news. Or maybe it's the checking of morning posts and Facebook of your friends online just to see what's going on with them and to stay connected. Yes, these habits of our mornings are our routines. And these are rituals, he writes. Well, many of you may have already received an email from me in my role for you as your minister late at night. For me, I am not a morning person. I am a night person. And we certainly have our rituals of our evenings. For some, the day ends with walking the dog in the evening fresh air. And this becomes a sacred habit, a reflective time, and sometimes a time to be alone. So walking the dog can be an act of sacred simplicity. It's a time to reflect, to regroup, and to perform a ritual of revival on an intimate scale, a small rebirth of well-being on a daily basis. Perhaps it's the reading of a book in your sitting chair, or maybe it's the kissing of your daughter's cheek as she goes to bed, or tickling the toes of your son as you tuck him into sleep. Robert Fulghum shares that our daily rituals such as these give structure and meaning to our everyday lives, and behavior that is repeatedly regular over and over serve a profound purpose. These repeated gestures become the bedrock of our lives. They offer a deep sense of connection through action with unnameable wonder and the mystery of life. Doesn't that sound like religion, he asks? And I would say, I guess it does. Making coffee, walking the dog, kissing our children. Yeah, that's religion. We are mindful that our routines are unconsciously constructed for ourselves. Yet, as we describe them in this way, we use the language of ritual and religion to speak of our mornings, our evenings, and we acknowledge that there is a deep desire of meaning, for meaning, planted in us. And for each of us, starting the day in a mindful manner, giving these mornings the purpose of a threshold, a passageway into the next part of our day, this embodies his premise that to be human is to be religious, and it's our routines that make it so. What do you think of when you hear the term religious? Fulghum writes, to think of religion in this way, ask yourself and think that every human being born has asked the same elemental religious questions. Who am I? What am I doing here? Where did I come from before birth, and where do I go after I die? What's right and wrong, and how do I know? What is the meaning of life, and how do I give meaning to my life? And last, how do I account for the awesome, mysterious majesty of the universe, and what's my place in the scheme of things? These questions, he says, the answers to these questions do not originate in society or a church. These questions first arise out of the deep inner space of each of us, and it has been so since the beginning of human consciousness. When we pay careful attention to these human questions, we find answers and hold to these answers with faith and devotion, thereby making them sacred to us. The asking and the answering process itself sanctifies existence, and we repeat this process lifelong. Ritual is one of the names that we give to this repetition. So I hope you humanists, like myself, have held in and can appreciate this book the way I do. Our lives are full of endless ritual. Patterns of repetition govern each day, each week, each year, and our lifetime itself. Our habits may be the way that we refer to these repeated patterns, but these habits are sacred because they give deliberate structure to our lives, and structure gives us security, and that sense of security is the ground of meaning. When some hear ritual, they think of religious bodies or institutions such as church. But rituals flow from the life of the individual into the church itself, into the religious institution. The rituals of the church are the organized communal forms of the needs and patterns of our lives as individuals. And communal activity, gathering as we do this morning, is one more way of supporting meaningful structure in our individual lives. So daily rituals make up that which gives sacredness to our life. So he is exploring in his book daily ritual, and also a second kind of ritual, which he would call rites of passage. Let's explore those. Ritual moments of life make changes from moment to moment, day to day, year to year, and from one stage of life to another. And the conscious acknowledgement of these changes are called rites of passage. Some we celebrate in public, such as a wedding. These are outward signs or sacraments of an inner sacred experience. And these circumstances, such as weddings or baby dedications or even a memorial service, give us a chance to make the circumstances sacred by our gathering together and imbuing them with meaning. And some rites of passage are private, such as birthdays, anniversaries, and accomplishments celebrated with a small group of family and friends. And most often, Fulghum writes that these rites of passage, this third kind, is celebrated in secret. Most often, these secret celebrations are passages of one's personal, solitary, and secret life, but they are no less momentous. Occurrences that you alone know have some irrevocable alteration to your existence. Things such as your first kiss, your first heartbreak, the first time you lost a job, the moment you found yourself renewed as you realized a hardship had passed. Yes, these are rites of passage too. And sometimes we are aware of the importance of these public, private, and secret moments. And at other times its importance is reestablished later through the ritual of remembering. We've all had these moments when something of importance happens to you. You just don't see it that time as a ritual, he writes. Only later in reflection do you see it was a crucial moment in the scheme of things. These threshold moments hold you in liminality. Liminality, taken from the Latin root limen, means the center line of the doorway. Liminality is that moment of crossing over. And all stages of life include liminality, because life is nothing but moments of crossing over. In time, we stitch these moments together into a quilt of remembering, and upon reconsideration, we imbue the past with meaning. This is ritual action in its basic forms. One of his propositions was that to pay attention with mindfulness is to sanctify our existence. So these rituals transform the ordinary, the everyday, the repeated into the sacred. So these two kinds of ritual acts, the daily things that fill our lives, and these moments of liminality, these things are observed, and they become rituals in which we mark our lives. The moments, the hours, the days, the weeks, and the years. Our rituals evolve and reform as we do. When observed, these rituals become the cairns, marking the path between what is behind us and what is ahead of us. And Fulghum says, without them, we lose our way. There's a moment in the book when I have read this book over and over again throughout the years, where I see my notes in the margins, where I can see what I thought about it 20 years ago when I read it the first time, and then 10 years ago when I reflected upon it as I started seminary. And I read this week, and I remembered how it felt to read these words. They bring tears to my eyes. I think it's just the meaning of this book really touches me. There's a Chinese proverb that says, "The remedy for dirt is soap and water, and the remedy for dying is living." From birth to death, our lives are filled with endings and beginnings, little deaths and revivals. Each day we go to sleep in the darkness to wake again to the glorious light of the stars, long ago alive and now dead. We all leave our childhood homes, our jobs, our divorces, our lost friendships, our miscarriages, and funerals to come back kicking. We are stubborn, and we find ways to reach out for new ways, for new jobs, for new friends, and new reasons just for scrambling on. Crossing these thresholds is a rite of passage, and revival is a lifelong friend. How meaningless our life can feel one day, only to soon be filled with hope in the days to come. Our capacity to take whatever life dishes out and to come back is never to be underestimated, for all the exits may become entrances. And daily we redeem ourselves in unspoken rituals of renewal. Daily we get up and go to work in the construction business of building and repairing and remodeling a life itself. This ritual of revival has many names: born again, healing, or simply getting our act together. Whatever the name, however large and small the act, the urge to reassemble the fragments of our lives into the whole is the same. Rituals bring us harmony. To be a master juggler is a feat. People are always impressed by how many balls are being thrown and being caught, and what is important is holding the balls just right, throwing them one at a time in rhythm and not altering your breath or inner adrenaline levels as the number of balls increases. And last, if you miss a ball, you can't get upset. You have to remain with your inner state and keep going. The secret of juggling is inner harmony and knowing how to let go. There is a philosophy of life in one statement. As I learn to juggle all the parts of my life, I have come to understand that meaningful rituals have a lot to do with gaining the inner harmony and making letting go as much of a part of life as holding on. How do we find that state of inner harmony? Our daily rituals become sacred habits, and although sometimes with practice, it may simply be to remember to smell the coffee in the morning, or to feel the rhythm of you and your dog walking together in the evening breeze. Yet most of us need to practice ways to find ways to just be in the present moment. Here is a list of ways to practice creating ritual. When sitting, just sit. When eating, just eat. When walking, just walk. And when listening, just listen. When looking, just look. And when thinking, just think. And when playing, just play. And enjoy the feeling of each moment and each day. These practices, these rituals of our days can become helpful aids like training wheels on a bike to use formally until you get the hang of what that feeling is, about being in the present from moment to moment. And with practice, we create sacred ritual in the everyday. What is your spiritual practice? I used to feel stressed by the idea of adding a spiritual practice to my life. In my daily life, especially, on top of that. Oh my goodness, another huge task, I thought. And so I tried various forms of meditation, and I just felt that I couldn't do it. I tried sitting meditation, walking meditation. I was fidgety and my thoughts wandered. I mean, really, really wandered. I overlooked that it was the practice that I did not know yet how to do. It didn't have to come easily. It isn't easy just to walk when walking, or just to eat when eating. I have to work at it, and this working at it is practice. I slowly realized that I was already doing what took me to a place of presence, of mindfulness. When I cook, I savor the smell of herbs, of spices, and the feel of fresh food in my fingers as I prepare it. And then I savor the flavor. And when I garden, I love the feeling of the dirt in my fingers. I know I should wear gloves, but I love the feel of the dirt. I like the tactile connection to the earth. And when I paint, I am amazed at the simplicity of the paintbrush on the canvas. I relish the act of painting more than the art that is the finished product. It is not about trying to change anything. This point is just to be aware of this moment as you are experiencing it. What is important is that you are awake, to be present in the moment with the whole of your experience, with your feelings, your intuition, your imagination, your body, and everything it feels and does with your thinking. It is all a part of who you are, but you are more than all of it, being whole and always growing as well, being and becoming, knowing and not knowing. Not only is it okay, it is absolutely wonderful. This means you are absolutely wonderful already. And so you don't have to become more wonderful or better. You just have to let yourself be yourself and learn not to get in the way, your own way, all the time. This was Buddha's original discovery. It's both very special and not so special, since everyone's mind is potentially the same as Buddha's. It is just a matter of being awake and paying attention. Yes, there are techniques that can help cultivate the understanding of who you are and of a full appreciation of being alive and sharing in life with all living things. Yet, these techniques are a way to get more intimate with your own life. So the practice of meditation is not limited to just sitting or lying down or your breathing for a period of time each day. These practices are really about being present, awake, and aware in your life, moment by moment and day by day, in everything you do without judgment. Rituals. Rituals anchor you to a center while freeing you to move on and confront the everlasting unpredictability of life. And the paradox of ritual patterns and sacred habits is that they simultaneously serve as solid footing and a springboard, providing a stable dynamic in our lives. Another title for this sermon could be, as Fulgham writes, the holy sacraments are made up of the daily stuff. So let us close where we started. Holly read this earlier, and I'll share it again. There is indeed a time for all things under heaven, and for all great rites of passage, weddings and funerals, graduations and retirements, a time for anniversaries and reunions, for sunrise and sundown, for moon and rain, for stars. A time for that first breath, and that last breath. But in the meantime, there is an infinite moment, a time to do the dishes, a time to walk the dog, a time to raise our children, and a time to love one another. May our lives be lived in mindful rejoicing that we are alive, and may the rituals of our lives bring us to the realization that the holy sacraments are made up of the daily stuff. Amen. May it be so, and Ashe. And now we come to the end of our service, and we extinguish the chalice with these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.